The cameras rolled, the studio of The View buzzed with energy as the audience clapped and cheered. Prince Harry stepped onto the stage with a polite smile, dressed sharply, calm, and confident. The audience stood, some snapping photos, others whispering with excitement. It was a big moment, his first live appearance since the headlines about his latest book and his comments about the royal family. He greeted each host, Joy, Sunny, Alyssa, and finally Whoopi. Everyone smiled. The mood was warm, light, professional. He sat down, folded his hands gently, and waited for the first question. Joy started with an easy one. "So, Harry, how's life in California treating you?" Harry chuckled. "Less rain, more sunshine. I'm not complaining." The audience laughed. It felt like any other celebrity interview. Sunny followed with a kind comment about his work on mental health. "You've done so much to bring attention to the invisible wounds people carry," she said. "Thank you," he replied, "something I care deeply about." We all carry stories. Then came Whoopi. She leaned forward, arms crossed. Her voice was calm but sharp. "So, Harry, with everything going on in America right now, poverty, racial injustice, healthcare, crises-wise, should people here care about royal drama?" The room shifted. You could feel it. The crowd that had been smiling a minute ago was now still. Even the other hosts exchanged glances. This wasn't the script they had prepared. Harry blinked once. His smile stayed, but his posture stiffened. "Well, I don't think it's just drama," he said slowly. "It's about institutions, identity, mental health, family. The issues are more universal than they seem." Whoopi didn't blink. "But those are our problems too," she said. "And most people here don't get book deals or Netflix specials to talk about their pain." Producers in the control room froze. "She's going off script." Someone whispered, "Do we cut?" "No," another replied. "Let it run." Harry nodded, staying calm. "I'm not here to sell pain," he said. "I'm here to talk about what we can learn when people stop hiding behind tradition and start speaking truth." "Truth," Whoopi repeated, leaning closer. "Or profit." There it was. The crowd didn't move. The tension hit like cold air. Even the cameras seemed quieter. Someone backstage stepped forward, thinking the moment needed help, but no one dared interrupt. Harry looked directly at Whoopi. "I chose truth over tradition," he said. "Decision cost me more than you can imagine." There was no dramatic music, no sound but a single cough in the back row. One slow clap started, then stopped. The energy had shifted. Joy looked toward the teleprompter, trying to pull the show back on track. But it was too late. The atmosphere was thick now, like a storm cloud hanging over the studio. Whoopi didn't reply. She sat back, arms still crossed. The conversation had moved into something deeper, something raw, and Prince Harry. He didn't smile anymore. He just looked out at the audience, calm and steady, like he knew this moment would command. That the silence that followed would say more than any headline. The commercial break ended and the lights returned, but the energy in the studio hadn't recovered. Prince Harry shifted slightly in his chair, fingers interlocked, eyes focused but guarded. Whoopi Goldberg's last question still echoed through the room. Truth or profit? The line had landed like a blow, and Harry hadn't fully shaken it off. Joy Behar jumped in quickly, her voice light and rehearsed. All right, let's take a breath. Prince Harry, tell us more about your foundation's latest work with military families." But it was too late to steer the conversation back to safety. The tension had already cut too deep, and the audience could feel it. What had begun as a glossy press tour had turned into something else, something raw and unpredictable. Harry gave a brief answer about service and duty, but even his words felt like they were reaching through fog. His tone was restrained, polite, but the spark from earlier had dimmed. Then Whoopi spoke again. No smile this time. "You talk about sacrifice," she said, voice steady. "But you left the palace, not poverty. You still have the title, the platform, the security. You say you gave everything up, but did you really? Harry turned slowly to face her. I gave up peace, he said. I gave up my home, my family, my sense of safety. Just because I still have a last name doesn't mean I didn't lose something. Some would say you gained a media empire. Whoopi responded flatly. Netflix, Spotify, book deals all while preaching about privacy. You see the contradiction, right? The audience tensed. This wasn't journalism anymore. This was a showdown. Behind the cameras, producers stood frozen. Phones buzzed quietly in the control room. Live comments on social media were already lighting up with fire emojis, furious hashtags, and applause from both sides. I never asked to be a public figure, Harry said, voice lower now. I was born into it. I tried to live quietly, but when my wife was being torn apart by the press, I had two options: stay silent and watch history repeat itself, or speak out and take the hits myself. And that's noble, Sonny Hostin added gently, trying to pull the show back to balance. We can't ignore how the press treated Meghan. The racism was real. Whoopi didn't disagree. But she wasn't finished either. I respect your pain, she said. But this isn't the BBC. It's not Buckingham Palace. This is The View. And when people come here with polished stories and pre-approved answers, it feels like they're not talking to us, they're talking at us. Harry looked at her, eyes narrowing not in anger but in exhaustion. I'm not here to play victim, he said. I'm here to say that even people with titles bleed. That even people who look like they have it all are fighting invisible wars. The audience went quiet again. Whoopi finally leaned back, exhaling. There was something almost respectful in her expression now, but it wasn't kindness. It was recognition. She had tested him. And he hadn't walked away yet. Joy glanced at the producer, eyes wide. Maybe we should cut to another break. But Whoopi raised one hand. Let him finish. Harry sat up straighter. My mother was hunted by cameras until the day she died. My wife was chased by lies until she nearly gave up everything. If you think I left a palace just to sell a Netflix deal, then you missed the point. A few audience members clapped softly. Others sat still, thinking. Whoopi nodded once, slowly. Then make us believe it, she said. Because if you want America to really listen, you can't just ask for sympathy. You have to earn trust. Now that means facing uncomfortable questions even when you don't like the tone. Harry didn't answer immediately. He looked around the room, the lights, the faces, the stage. Then he said, fair enough. But behind that calm reply, something had cracked. Not visibly, but deep enough that the rest of the interview would never recover. And neither would the public's opinion, no matter which side they were on. When the show returned from break again, the smiles had vanished completely. Whoopi sat stiff in her chair, arms folded. Prince Harry's expression was focused, but his jaw tightened as if every word he was about to say had to pass through 1,000 thoughts before reaching his lips. Joy Behar leaned forward, voice quieter now. Harry, when you talk about trauma, it's deeply personal. And no one here questions your pain. But how do you respond to people who say you've turned that pain into a brand? The question was worded carefully, but it landed the same. Harry paused, then looked directly at Joy. I don't have a brand, he said. I have a story. One I never wanted to tell, but silence almost destroyed us. And when silence becomes survival, something inside you breaks. There was a quiet murmur in the crowd. It's the kind that meant people were shifting, processing, holding their opinions back until they heard just a little more. I understand the criticism, Harry continued. And I accept that I'm in the public eye. But I will never apologize for protecting my family, even if protecting them means making millions from their story. Whoopi's voice came sharp again. Harry's face barely moved, but his tone changed. I lost everything that felt safe. I gained money, sure, but it didn't come with peace. It came with headlines, hate, death threats. You think that's worth the price? Whoopi stared back. You say people attacked Meghan because she was black? And I believe racism played a role. But what about power? What about the power you two hold now in American media? You say the institution silenced you. But now you're the institution. A few gasps filled the audience. Sunny Hostin sat frozen, her notes untouched. Alyssa tried to interject, but no one heard her. All eyes were on Harry and Whoopi now. The studio lights, the silence. The tension it all created a moment that felt too real for daytime TV. Harry leaned forward. I didn't ask for this power. And I've used it to talk about mental health, service, equality, not just the monarchy. But if you think I'm the institution now then, maybe it says more about how broken the old one was. The line struck deep. A few people in the crowd clapped, quietly, almost nervously. Behind the cameras, producers were texting each other in a frenzy. One whispered into the earpiece of a stage manager, "Should we wrap? Cut early?" But Whoopi wasn't finished. "I just want to know," she said, her voice quieter now. "At what point does pain stop being your shield and start becoming your weapon?" Harry's eyes didn't blink. "You think I use pain as a weapon?" "I think everyone in power does." "Sometimes," Whoopi replied. "The palace did. The media does, so why not you?" The silence that followed was thick and strange. Even Joy Behar didn't speak. Finally, Harry responded. "I use my pain as a warning," he said, "'cause I know how quiet suffering can kill. And I'd rather be hated for speaking out than loved for staying quiet." Whoopi nodded slowly. For the first time, her posture softened, but her eyes never left his. "That's the first real answer I've heard today," she said. Then she leaned back, folded her hands, and looked toward the audience. "You all heard him. Make up your own minds." The audience didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just sat in silence, eyes wide, caught in a moment no one had planned, but everyone would remember. No teleprompter, no joke, no escape. Only truth and tension. And a conversation too big for a single stage. The producers had never seen anything like it. The View was known for heated discussions, even occasional clashes, but this was different. This wasn't a celebrity promoting a book or a royal visiting a daytime talk show. This was a courtroom disguised as a studio, a live trial of trauma, truth, and who had the right to speak. Backstage, tension was rising. Meghan Markle, who had stayed away from the set out of caution, was now watching the feed from a private room, her expression unreadable. Her team whispered around her, nervously scrolling social media. Clips were already flooding online, half praising Harry's courage, half accusing him of arrogance. On stage, Harry adjusted in his chair. He looked exhausted but focused. "Sunny." Hostin tried to redirect the conversation. "Let's bring it back to your work. Prince Harry. Veterans' mental health." But Whoopi raised her hand. "No," she said flatly. "Let's stay where we are." The room stilled again. "You came here to be heard, Prince Harry, so let's not dance around it anymore. What is it you want us to understand truly about you? About Meghan? About this war you're fighting?" Harry took a long breath. "I want people to understand that we didn't escape a palace," he said. "We escaped a system, one that polishes crowns but destroys lives. A system that smiles for the cameras while it starves your soul behind the scenes." The camera zoomed in slowly, catching the intensity in his voice. "I didn't leave because I wanted attention. I left because we were drowning in silence. Meghan was being torn apart. Headlines mocking her. Death threats sent to our home. And when we asked for help, we were told to smile more." Whoopi leaned in again. "But what about now? You're not silent anymore. You've got a platform, a podcast, Netflix. Books. People say you've turned that pain into a performance. A flicker of emotion crossed Harry's face. "You think this is a performance?" he asked, voice low. "You think it's easy to tell the world your father wouldn't return your calls? That your brother screamed at you behind closed doors? That the institution you were raised to protect left your wife sobbing on the floor while pregnant?" The audience remained dead silent. No applause, no coughs. Nothing but raw tension. "And let's not pretend this is just about family drama," Harry added. "It's about race. It's about power." Meghan didn't just break royal tradition. She broke their image. A woman of color who didn't bow quietly. There it was, the moment no one could sidestep. Whoopi straightened in her chair, staring hard at him. "And now?" she asked. "Now that you're free, what do you do with that freedom?" Harry's voice softened but didn't lose its edge. "I use it to say what others can't. To show people that no amount of titles, no amount of money can protect you from a broken system. But truth, that still matters, even if it costs you everything." Behind the cameras, the control room was panicking. Ratings were skyrocketing, but so were concerns from executives. Network lawyers had begun sending emails. The interview had gone far off script hand. It wasn't just celebrity gossip anymore. It was turning into a political and cultural flashpoint. Then something shifted. Joy Behar leaned forward. "Do you regret it, Harry?" she asked, gently. "All of it. The interviews, the headlines, walking away from your role. Would you go back?" Harry didn't hesitate. "No," he said, "because going back would mean lying again. And I've seen what lies do. They protect institutions, not people. And I won't lie anymore." Silence again, till Whoopi leaned back and said, almost softly, "Well, now we know why the palace never wanted you on live TV." The audience laughed, but not everyone. Some people were still holding their breath, not sure whether to smile or to stay stunned. Because everyone knew the conversation had gone beyond television. This wasn't just about royals. It was about truth, control, and what happens when someone refuses to stay silent and live national air. Backstage chaos had turned into something else strategy. Producers were no longer debating whether to cut the feed. They were discussing how to protect the network from fallout. Lawyers were in the hallway, whispering with assistants. Sponsors were calling. Some wanted reassurance, others wanted distance. But on set, the conversation hadn't lost its rhythm. It had only sharpened. Prince Harry sat quietly, hands folded, his breath steady but shallow. Whoopi Goldberg was staring at him, not with cruelty, but with something closer to caution. She knew what they were stepping into. She didn't plan to step back. Joy Behar checked her notes, trying to find a new lane. But Whoopi jumped in first. "You said silence was killing you," she said. "But now that you're speaking, you're also profiting. How do you explain that to people who think you turned trauma into a brand?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Harry didn't answer immediately. He looked down, then up. "My trauma isn't a brand," he said quietly. "It's a scar. The only difference is I'm not covering it with makeup anymore." The audience didn't clap, but they listened. "I know what people say, that I cashed in, that we made documentaries, podcasts, memoirs, like it was all part of a plan. But here's the truth. We didn't choose the spotlight. It followed us. And when we tried to tell our story quietly, it was twisted, so we took the narrative back." He turned slightly to face the cameras. "This isn't about fame. It's about survival." The control room watched with unease. Harry wasn't just doing damage control. He was digging deeper. And the deeper he went, the more uncontrollable the interview became. Sunny Hostin tried to play mediator again. "But don't you think your voice carries more weight because of your title?" she asked. "Would the world care this much if you were just Harry from Kensington?" Harry gave a sad smile. "No," he said, "probably not. But that's the point. The system built me up as a prince, and now it's angry I'm acting human." Then, unexpectedly, Alyssa Farah Griffin jumped in. Her voice was cautious but firm. You criticize the monarchy, Harry, but America has its own deep problems: racism, inequality, media exploitation. Do you ever worry you've traded one broken system for another? Harry looked straight at her. I didn't come to America looking for perfection. I came here looking for permission. Permission to live, to speak, to protect my wife and children. The systems here are flawed, yes. But here, at least, I'm not punished for telling the truth. Another silence followed, the kind that made the floor beneath the cameras feel heavier. Then Whoopi leaned forward again. "Kay," she said softly, "let me ask you something that's not about the crown or the book or the Netflix deal." Harry nodded slightly, bracing. "Do you believe the world will ever forgive you?" His face froze for just a moment. "I don't know," he replied. "And maybe that's not the point. Maybe forgiveness isn't something I can ask for right now. Maybe it's something that happens slowly. People are willing to listen, not just watch." His voice trembled, but he kept speaking. "I know is that silence protected the wrong people for too long, and I won't let that silence win." The lights on the set dimmed slightly as they cut to commercial break, but no one moved. Not the hosts, not the audience, not even Harry. He was still seated, eyes locked forward. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't being talked about. He was just talking. And this time, the world was actually hearing him. This continues directly after Part 5, maintaining the cinematic CNN Al Jazeera-style investigative tone, written in basic, clear English 900 words. The commercial break ended. But the energy in the room didn't reset. The applause sign flashed, but barely anyone clapped. It wasn't the kind of segment you could bounce back from with jokes or trivia. Prince Harry was still sitting forward, hands resting on the table, looking both calm and exhausted. Whoopi Goldberg was more still than usual, focused, intense. Her earlier sharpness had softened, but her edge was still there, watching him like a seasoned observer, not just a host. Joy Behar cleared her throat, tried to push the tone lighter. "Well, that got real," she said with a chuckle. No one joined her. Sunny Hostin took the next question. "Harry, let's talk about accountability. Spoken a lot about your pain and your family's role in it. But do you take responsibility for anything? For the public fallout? For the division it's caused?" Harry didn't react at first. Then he nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "That's fair. I was angry. I still am. And sometimes anger makes you speak louder than you should. Maybe I've made some mistakes. Kay? Maybe I trusted the wrong people to tell my story. Kay, but I won't apologize for trying to break a cycle." He looked down at his lap, then up again. Accountability isn't about being perfect. It's about telling the truth even when it hurts you. There was a pause, not long but deep. And that's when Whoopi finally spoke again. "You keep talking about truth," she said. "But truth has layers. Your truth, Meghan's truth. The royal family's truth. And then there's the public truth, the one that gets shaped by headlines. How do we know which one is real?" Harry didn't flinch. He had expected this. "You don't," he answered. "You're not supposed to trust a single version. You're supposed to listen to all of them. That's why we did interviews. That's why we filmed the docuseries. It wasn't about controlling the story. It was about opening it up, making space for the mess. 'Cause real families are messy." "And what about the Queen?" Alyssa jumped in, voice hesitant. "Do you think she'd be proud of how far this has gone?" That one hit hard. Harry looked away for a long moment. "I loved my grandmother," he said, voice lower. "We didn't always agree, but I know she believed in duty. And telling the truth even when it's difficult as part of duty. So, yes, I think somewhere she'd understand." The silence that followed was heavier than before. Then Whoopi leaned forward. Not to argue this time, but to ask something different. "Kay? So what now?" Harry blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, where does this end?" she asked. "You've spoken out. You've stepped back. You've built a new life. But will there ever be peace? Or will the story just keep spinning forever?" Harry sat back slightly, thinking. Then he said, "I don't know if there's peace, but there's a path. For me, it's about being a father, being a husband, and continuing to do the work on myself in the world wherever I can." He looked at Whoopi this time with less tension and more honesty. "I know some people will never forgive me. Some think I've betrayed my family. Others think I've exploited my pain, but I didn't come here to be liked. I came here to be honest." For a moment, Whoopi didn't say anything. Then she gave a small nod. "Fair," she said. It was the first word that felt like an opening instead of a challenge. Behind the cameras, the producers were stunned. This segment had gone far off script, but somehow it had become something real, something different. Alyssa spoke again, careful not to break the balance. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The palace, the life you left behind." Harry gave a tired smile. "Sometimes," he said, "I miss the people, the traditions, even the structure, strange as that sounds. But I don't miss feeling like I had to wear a mask every day. I don't miss pretending I was okay when I wasn't." He looked at the co-hosts, then the cameras. "I've learned that it's better to be uncomfortable in the truth than comfortable in a lie." The studio was still. No cue cards, no laughter. Quiet tension and a sense that the audience had witnessed something unscripted and real. Joy Behar finally leaned back, breaking the silence. "Well, Harry," she said, "this wasn't the interview anyone expected. But maybe it was the one we needed." He nodded once, softly. "I think that's true." Whoopi looked at him again longer this time. And for the first time all segment, her voice lowered into something almost kind. "Just remember," she said, "once you start telling your truth, you can't stop halfway. People will challenge you. They'll twist it. But if it's real, it survives the fire." Harry didn't respond right away. But when he finally did, he said only this: "Then let it burn." And the screen faded to black. But the story was far from over. The episode ended, but the fallout had just begun. Within minutes of the taping, clips from the explosive interview began surfacing online. Few audience members had managed to film the moment when Prince Harry leaned forward and said, "Then let it burn." That line infiltrated raw, defiant went viral almost instantly. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag let it burn. Hashtag Whoopi V's Harry, #Royal Truth. In London, the press was merciless. The Daily Mail ran a full-page headline: "Harry lights fire on American TV." Buckingham Palace, true to form, issued no official response. But sources close to the royals told reporters the family was shocked, embarrassed, and disappointed. In California, Meghan was silent. No tweets, no posts, nothing. But close friends hinted that she had watched the interview live, that her phone hadn't stopped ringing since. Back at the View studios, producers huddled in a small conference room, watching the digital metrics soar. The network had just pulled its highest live engagement in 3 years. Viewership was already being compared to Oprah's Meghan and Harry interview. Except this one had been unplanned, real, dangerous. Joy Behar, always one to turn tension into content, posted a selfie with the caption, "When the tea is scalding." But Whoopi didn't post anything. She left the studio quietly, without her usual smile, her eyes thoughtful. Prince Harry, meanwhile, slipped out a side exit and into a waiting SUV. His team surrounded him, tight faces, tense voices. But Harry wasn't speaking, sat back in the seat, staring out the window, jaw clenched. They asked if he was okay. He nodded. They asked if he wanted to release a statement. He said no. Let it speak for itself. But by midnight, things had escalated. An anonymous White House official was quoted saying the interview raised uncomfortable questions about media ethics and the pressure on modern public figures. A British MP demanded Parliament formally address the repeated media stunts of the Duke and Duchess. On CNN, analysts debated whether Prince Harry had just declared a personal war on monarchy itself, and on social media. The divide grew. Deeper. Some praised Whoopi for holding a royal accountable. Others accused her of ambushing a trauma survivor for ratings. Some called Harry a truth-teller. Others called him a privileged narcissist, weaponizing sympathy. By morning, a petition had started demanding Whoopi apologize publicly. Another petition, nearly as large, demanded she receive an Emmy. The View's next broadcast was scheduled for noon. Every seat in the studio was filled. Outside, news vans lined the sidewalk. Inside, the mood was cautious. Whoopi arrived early and walked directly to the host's desk, her notes in hand. Headphones on. The producers offered her the option to clarify her remarks. She refused. "It's not my job to soften the truth," she said. "It's my job to ask hard questions." As the broadcast went live, the audience held its breath. Joy opened the segment with a tight smile. "Well, folks, if you were watching yesterday, you know what happened? Laughter, awkward, nervous, sunny." Hostin leaned in. "Was one of the most intense moments we've ever had on this table." Then Whoopi spoke. "We don't bring people here to make them comfortable. We bring them here because the world wants the real version. Sometimes that version isn't clean. It isn't soft. But it's honest." There was no apology, no walk back. Just a stare into the camera that said, "You saw it." You decide. In California, Harry watched the segment from his living room. Alone, Meghan was in another room with the kids. He didn't text anyone, didn't call his team. Just watched. And when it ended, he stood up slowly, walked to the balcony, and looked out across the trees. The storm was raging again, but this time he felt something different. He didn't feel broken, or afraid, or silenced. He felt seen. For the first time in years, Harry wasn't being interpreted by press advisors or royal aides. He wasn't a prince. He wasn't a victim. He was just ... a man. A man who had told the truth and hadn't backed down. Even when the lights were brightest and the room turned cold. And for all the headlines, for all the noise, it had worked. People were listening. The silence Whoopi left in that studio wasn't an accident. It was an invitation to talk, to question, to challenge, to begin again.